On today's show, the Oklahoma City Thunder think they have the West all shorn up, but they also thought they had this game against the Timberwolves all shorn up and lost it in overtime. That and a bunch more on today's Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
And welcome. You are Locked On to NBA Game Night. My name is Nick Angstadt, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being an everydayer, making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen today. Joining me, as always, on a Monday night from the Locked On Bucks podcast. What you see in the NBA tonight, Camille Davis?
Surprises. A lot of surprises around the league. Did not expect the type of games that we got tonight, but I'm thankful for it because it turned out to be way more entertaining than I thought.
Minnesota OKC, second night of a back-to-back where they both played each other the night before.
Right.
We also got a bunch of games in the association. The Pistons get their 7th straight win. We'll talk about them for sure. The Heat can't score on anybody right now. And the Sixers reach a new low, which is saying something for them. We'll get into all the games that happened tonight. Let's start here with the Timberwolves against the Thunder. A really great win for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who did not look like they could beat them the night before, but played okay. And then they were down by 24 with 10 minutes left. They were down by 12 with 4 minutes left. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, they cut it a little bit. And then it was 121 to 105 with about 4 minutes left. Looked like the OKC was going to roll to the end of it. And then Minnesota forces overtime. Let's hear from our guy, Ben Beacon of Locked On Wolves.
The Minnesota Timberwolves won a thriller over the OKC Thunder on the road on Monday night. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the Locked On Wolves podcast. The Timberwolves were down by as many as 25 points in the second half. They were down by 22 early in the fourth quarter, down by so much late that Anthony Edwards was actually taken out of the game, and the comeback happened in the final minutes with Ant on the bench and a young lineup centered around Rob Dillingham and TJ Shannon, Jalen Clark on the floor, and a lot of Jaden McDaniels and a lot of Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker down the stretch, and the Wolves ended up forcing overtime. Ant came back in about midway through overtime and had a game-saving block reminiscent of his block against the Pacers last year. Just an absolute unbelievable play, blocking SGA at the rim with the Wolves up 1 and under 10 seconds to play in overtime. The Wolves, Nickeil Alexander-Walker hit a pair of free throws on the other end to seal the game, or at least put them up by 3, but then another strong defensive possession as the Wolves continually forced the ball out of SGA's hands down the stretch and held on to win. We're going to break the whole thing down over at Locked On Wolves.
Camille, the biggest reason the Timberwolves got this win is?
Exactly how he ended that clip, because the Wolves were able to get the ball out of SGA's hands. They threw that zone look at the Thunder, and they also were throwing in like some doubles and some soft traps on SGA as well within that zone, forcing other guys to just become catch and shoot guys. And they were not able to knock down any of those looks, even the wide open ones. It was like they got out of their rhythm trying to go against that zone defensively. And the the Wolves were able to get those stops, and on the other end, get some buckets, get that run going. Then by the time overtime came, and then they got Ant back in, even though he didn't have the best night scoring the ball like efficiently, he was able to make an impact throughout the game with his rebounding, with assists, with the block. It was a solid team win from this Wolves team. Super solid.
Ant also had a moment in the middle of the third quarter where he just got tired of SGA and just shoved him in the back on like a screen, shoved him to the ground, which is just Anthony Edwards to a T. But in this game, the end of this game was so wild because they did start that zone, like you said. And for the Thunder, this is only their 4th one possession game of the season. They have dominated the games that they've played, or their losses have not all been one possession games either. And so they haven't been in a ton of close games, and you want a team like that struggled in the playoffs against the Mavericks in that second round series to have some more of those opportunities and have more games like this where all right, how do we win a game like this? And to see them lose that lead late and then to just go to that, all right, we're going to just try it. You take a 3, you take a 3, you take a 3. And they just kept missing and missing and missing over and over again and didn't try other stuff or just kept going back to that well. That was interesting. That was really interesting to me. And it's one of the reasons why I don't think that I think that there are some people that think that the Thunder are vulnerable and could lose in the playoffs again. And it's a game like this that makes you think like that.
They could. They could. I mean, they even went back to SGA down the stretch there, ball in his hand, and he wasn't able to get anything to go. The Wolves defense was really locked in. Again, we mentioned the block that Ant had on SGA at the rim there, and even his final 3 attempt. Like, Ant was in his face. He made that a really difficult shot attempt for SGA, but SGA has been so talented this season where it was like, I still thought that he could have made that shot, even though the degree of difficulty was super high on it. But the Thunder have been playing really good ball, but there is no team in the NBA that is without any weakness, that is completely invulnerable to anything. And it's just, hey, playoffs about the matchups. And the Thunder and the Wolves would be one of those playoff series that I would sign up for 7 games for immediately.
And it's wild because so Isaiah Hartenstein played in this game, but he went out in the beginning of the third quarter with a facial contusion. Dante DiVincenzo, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert didn't play for the Timberwolves, so you can't really complain about injuries on that side. Chet goes out for the Thunder as well. The Thunder had Jalen Williams, the big Jalen Williams, so they could have tried him, but they just went small and matched they just matched Minnesota. Minnesota had Naz Reid out there too, and they just got out rebounded at the end too. Anthony Edwards had 13, Naz had 11. Jaden McDaniels had 10. Jaden McDaniels also had some massive moments in this game, that and one against Caruso at the end of regulation that tied the game at 121. But to me, I still think the story of this game is the Thunder not being able to score basically in the last 4 minutes of regulation. That was a very interesting moment of this game to go back and watch. I also thought SGA tried for the foul on that final second shot in overtime instead
he
of
loves a good foul. He knows he loves this.
I didn't want to say it as the Mavs guy. I didn't want to say it. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that rivalry anymore. If it's real. Yeah, it was wild to me. That was a wild game. Really good win for the Timberwolves though. They needed a win like this that just felt like the vibes were back in a way. And you could see even with Anthony Edwards sitting the last back end of the game, after he got that block, he goes back to the bench and it's all smiles on that bench for the Timberwolves.
He was even cheering when he was on the bench for his guys as they were making that run. I could see him standing up on the sideline cheering his guys on. So it wasn't any ego in that for Ant. He just wanted to see his team find a way to get the victory. And he got to play a part in that along the way as well, which was dope for him.
And if it was ego, he just stored it all up like it was a Kamehameha, and he just like exploded into that block with 10 seconds left in overtime. I mean, he just used all of that like potential energy and turned it into kinetic energy right there.
Exactly. And the good news for the Wolves is that Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle should be back soon. So some help is on the way.
They're like, Randle, you can stay out just a little longer. I think
yeah, unless you don't think Randle's really help, in which case, some sabotage is coming then.
The Denver Nuggets also got a nice win. They had recently gone through a stretch where they won a bunch of games in a row, but they were all against really, really bad opponents. But they get a solid win tonight against the Indiana Pacers. Let's hear from our guy Swiper from Locked On Nuggets.
Get a huge win over the Indiana Pacers, 125-116. And this was a game where the Denver Nuggets needed to get another win versus a playoff level team. The Pacers currently sitting at the 4th seed. They've been one of the best teams in the NBA since January 1st. Top 10 in both offense and defense. And the Nuggets, coming off a loss versus the Los Angeles Lakers, they needed to go out and get the vibes back where they were. The Nuggets are 10-1 now in the last 11 games. Nikola Jokic, a career high 19 assists in this game. Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray all have really good moments today. The Denver Nuggets, they continue to be one of the best teams in the league since the turn of the year. Now the Nuggets get ready to take on the Bucks, the Pistons, and the Celtics on the rest of this Eastern Conference road trip.
What do the Nuggets have to show you?
Consistency. I mean, as said, they had a 9-game win streak, but those came against some below average teams in the league right now. And after they lost it, I mean, you even had Jokic out here talking about some maybe we tricked ourselves into think that we were playing good. Like he said it himself. Like going into this game, the Nuggets were just 10-14 against teams that currently had winning records. So this road trip that they're on right now, starting with this game that they just had against the Pacers, a big win for them because Indiana, Milwaukee, Detroit, and Boston, 4 teams that are playing pretty well right now in the East. So if they can come out with some victories here, it's going to show like it wasn't just a mirage. The game against the Lakers was just a bad game. The Lakers game playing really well against you guys.
Yeah.
Now you bounce back.
Yeah, you get that. Jokic, the 19 assists is a career high, 39 assists total for the Nuggets. Just a really great passing game for them. The second most assists in a game by a center. Do you want to guess who the number one is? Who has the most assists in a game as a center? Think about gaudy numbers.
Is it Wilt?
Wilt Chamberlain had 21 assists in a game. Jokic is 19. Wilt also had a game with 19. Jokic had 2 games with 18 assists. Wilt had a game with 17. Jokic had 3 games with 17 assists. And then 16 assists. Jokic just had 11 games.
Oh my goodness.
The two of those guys just dominating that list of the most assists in a single game by a center. So shout out to Jokic for that career achievement there. Coming up, the Detroit Pistons get a win. It is Monday night, so you know we're talking about a big Pistons win here on game night. Let's hear from them and what it means for their team going forward coming up. Today's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night is brought to you by DoorDash. Go check out DoorDash because right now you can get, let's see, if the Hornets had just allowed, the Hornets has been a little bit closer and Zach LaVine was allowed to play a little bit longer in that game for the Kings, maybe he would have gotten 50. And if he would have gotten 50, you could have gotten 50% off an order of $10, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight on DoorDash with Dash Pass. You can get that if any player gets 50 or more in a game. Again, check it out and see how you can get it. You can use it in all different ways. If you need a lunch on the go, or if you're staying in the office because you got to do more work and keep up with everybody next to you and all that kind of stuff, do that with DoorDash. Sign up for Dash Pass. Be ready to save when any player scores 50 or more. Dash Pass member get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use the promo code NBA50. NBA, the letters, then number 5, number 0, NBA 50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA Game Night. We have a daily show that covers your favorite team. Check the link in the description to find a show that covers your team, like the Locked On Bucks show, like Locked On Mavs. Yes, we're still covering the Mavs. Yes, today was basically Locked On Luka, but you know, we cover the Mavs the rest of the season.
You got to give people what they want. And that's what they want, Nick. That's what they want.
That's right. That's right. And what the people want here on game night on Monday night is a big Pistons win. They got another one. Let's hear from our guy, Kuka Hill, who is as fired up as anybody is.
Pistons have won 7 straight games. Who at any point thought that the Pistons would be able to pull off 7 straight games in a row? That's hard for any NBA team to do. I don't care who you're going against. Locked On Pistons host Kuka Hill here. Cade Cunningham went crazy tonight, showed that he has more in his game than ever at this point. He's able to go to the pull-up 3. He's able to get to the floater. He's able to get to the post game. He's also getting to the free throw line a lot more. Got to the free throw line 12 times in this game. But the Pistons won this game because of their defense. That bench lineup at the end of the third quarter, going to the fourth quarter, led by Isaiah Stewart, really won the Pistons this game. Also, the defense from Ausar Thompson on James Harden had him in absolute prison, Guantanamo Bay kind of stuff. It was illegal. What Ausar Thompson did to James Harden in this game is illegal in 50 states. This defensive performance by the Pistons, a day after winning a game, scoring 130 plus, they show they can win in a multitude of ways. This Pistons team is legit.
Send Ausar Thompson to Guantanamo, Koo says. What did you see from the Pistons in this win?
A lot of what he mentioned, and really what has propelled the Pistons so far this season, which is one, Cade Cunningham is a star. Like, he has really taken that leap. He can be the number one guy on a winning basketball team, and he is showing that night in and night out with the Pistons. And also, they are starting to have some other players start to emerge for them, like Thompson coming through really big. Even Jalen Duren, like huge. 12 points, 19 boards. Tobias Harris looking like the guy who they hoped he would be for this young Pistons team. They're just playing some really good ball. They're playing really well together. They're 21-9 since December 21st. They've now won more games this season than the last 2 seasons combined.
Is that true? Than the last 2 seasons combined?
Last year, they won 14 games. The year before that, they won 17, which is 31 games. The last 2 seasons, they have won 32 games already this season.
I'm not usually caught off guard by a stat. That is insane to me, that Pistons team. I think there was two plays in this game that completely turned the tide because it was an even back and forth game for the most of this. Third quarter, 4 minutes and 35 seconds left. Cade got a big rebound. He was fighting with Derrick Jones Jr., pulled the ball, basically like yanked the ball away from him, got it, went coast to coast with an in and out dribble right to the rim, gave them the lead, and they never looked back from that lead. I think that was a huge play. I think the Clippers called timeout after that, and then right after that, 4 minutes left, Cade gets a pick and roll behind the back crossover. Like he crosses over from behind his back, crossed over Clippers player. Then I think Eubanks had to come up and help. A lob straight up to Duren, up by 3 at that point. Clippers then call a timeout. It was just 2 momentum-changing plays, and it was Cade Cunningham doing what he does, coast to coast, driving, dribble moves, throwing it up, like making the right play, doing what he does. He had 18 points in the second half. It was a massive showing, I think, from him. This Clippers team didn't have Kawhi Leonard, didn't have Norman Powell, didn't have Ben Simmons, who has been like their backup 5, so they had to play Drew Eubanks. And I was texting with Darian, our Locked On Clippers host, and I was like, man, the Drew Eubanks drop off from Zubats to Eubanks is tough. Yeah. And he goes, Eubanks is not an NBA player. I was like,
I mean, I can't.
Tough.
He has a contract, right? He's an NBA player, but what we've seen on the court, especially like you mentioned, that drop from seeing what Zoo can do, and then Eubanks comes in, tough. Like it's a steep drop, especially when you're going up against athletic young bigs like the Pistons have. So that's a tough matchup for him.
And he was in the end of that third quarter run that Koo was talking about, where they basically won the game, that bench lineup, and they were just going at him over and over again. And the Clippers didn't really even have an answer. They've been using Ben Simmons as that backup 5, Darian was talking about. And so they didn't have that option to go to in this game. Last thing here on this game, like 3 seconds left, down by 11. Chris Dunn, walks through the defense, no defense, and just walks up and hits the layup with 3 seconds left to cut the lead to 9. Count it up. Is it? You like it? Are you petty and say that is against the game, unwritten rules, all that?
I'm a fan of the NBA Cup stuff when they had the point differential, because that type of behavior is encouraged. But outside of that, like there's no benefit. Like it's one of those unwritten rules that
everybody got 2 points.
Yeah, like it's still subscribed to. Where it's like, dog, we weren't even like, really? You gonna try to get this little cheap basket? Really? This is what's gonna make you feel better in this game? All right, fam. I'm glad the Pistons didn't react and get all like in their chest body about it. They just kind of let it go. But Chris Dunn know what he did.
The next time the Lakers play the Clippers, they're going to find out Luka hates that guy. Like anything that he does. And I think this is one of the reasons, is because stuff like this I hate this stuff. Like you don't do it. Everybody's given up. You're walking. You don't just go and like, take a layup here. Unless, was it Pistons by, or was it Pistons? What was the spread in this game?
That's a question that we should ask. And if it's close and that layup has something to do with things, I'm not saying to start an investigation. I'm just saying.
Can you imagine everybody in a room freaking out? What are you doing, Chris Dunn? Like they start freaking out. I can't imagine it was the line was more than 10.
It couldn't be.
Yeah, but Pistons, great win, 7th win in a row, first time since 2014-15. When Cade Cunningham was?
Golly, what was he, like 17 at that time?
13
16?
years old.
Oh my goodness. I'm even older than I thought.
Insane. Great win for the Pistons. They're moving up, man. They have an opportunity. We talked about them a lot on the East Squad show and talked about what they can do and the possibility for them. They're squarely in the 6th seed right now with like a big lead over the Magic, which is just a great bounce back win. JB Bickerstaff should be coach of the year, I think, for sure.
Yeah, it's him or Atkinson for sure. But I think what they're doing in Cleveland with their record and everything like that, he's probably going to get the nod. But I think JB is somebody who needs to be in the conversation.
Coach that is usually in the conversation for coach of the year is Eric Spoelstra. But after this game tonight against the Hawks, I don't think that the Heat are getting any kind of postseason award nominations. They lose to the Hawks. Let's hear from Wes Goldberg of Locked On Heat.
Tonight, another bad loss for the Miami Heat. This one in Atlanta against the Hawks. They scored just 86 points against the Hawks defense that had given up 140 points to 2 of their last 3 opponents. 86 points against a team that had allowed fewer than 100 points just once all season. Had not allowed fewer than 90 points at all until Monday night. And the Heat do it by going 7 of 40 from 3-point range, shooting 32% overall. This is a Heat offense that has slipped to 25th in the league since January 1st. The crazy part about that is that before January 1st, they were 10th in offensive rating. The Jimmy Butler saga is over. The emotional hangover probably still there a little bit, but the Heat are running out of excuses and they're running out of reasons. Eric Spoelstra in this game, benching Terry Rozier, DNPCD, Jaime Jaquez Jr. plays just 7 minutes in this game. The guys who are struggling basically out of the rotation, that didn't matter either. Eric Spoelstra and the Heat are running out of answers. They're running out of solutions. And they don't have a lot of time to make it up as they fall 4 games under 500 and falling further down the Eastern Conference standings.
I know last week we talked that you don't really have ill will towards the Heat because Jimmy Butler is gone, but do you want to dance on their grave a little bit here?
I mean, I'm not going to say I don't get any enjoyment out of watching the Heat lose. Seeing that they only scored 86 points is like, what is it, 2002? What kind of score is this? I completely unexpected, especially after watching them against the Bucks last night and seeing Tyler Hero go off for 40.
Yeah.
To see him be held in check the way that he was in this game, you can say fatigue because, again, it is second night of a back-to-back, but they had nothing from anybody consistently throughout this game. I mean, Wiggins got 23, but 6-14 from the field. The free throws helped, but like it just was rough and tough for them the entire night.
Tyler Hero, 4 of 19 from the field, missed all 9 of his threes, only 11 points. You mentioned he had a great night last night. I was listening to Danny and Swipa on game night last night, and Swipa was like, I've had this thing for a month. Tyler Hero should be third team All-NBA this season. He's got a case to make it. And I'm like, I don't think this is a very good night for that case. I think that took a nosedive after this one because he ran into the Great Barrier Thief.
Yeah, he did. What Dyson Daniels is doing this year is utterly ridiculous. I can't believe sometimes looking at his numbers, they're just gaudy. Like he has 3 games with at least 7 steals.
He had one tonight.
What? That's crazy. He's on pace to be the first player to average like at least 3 steals a game in like 20 some years.
He's been incredible. The Hawks, they get a win. So go check out Locked On Hawks, Brad Rowland, for the talk about that. Coming up, let's get into Count It Up, where we count out the most interesting, fun things in the NBA. Not really that fun, but for the Sixers. So if you're a Sixers fan, maybe not, but they need to shut it down. They do. Tell you why. Coming up.
Count it up.
Big chicken, baby.
Zion Williamson and porn star.
Take that for that. Count it up. Count it up. Count it up. Count it up. Count it up.
The Philadelphia 76ers lose 110 to 142. It's their 8th straight loss. Their first time losing 8 straight games since 2016-17, Joel Embiid's rookie season. Remember what he didn't play. I'm having a hard time looking at the Sixers squad and looking at the Sixers team. We talked about this on the East squad show today as well. And trying to figure out a reason why they shouldn't shut everybody down. Camille?
Count it up.
Name me one reason Philly shouldn't shut down Embiid and just ride out this season.
There isn't one, Nick. There is not one reason that they shouldn't do that. They should
pride.
They should also shut Paul George down too after he was
podcast too. Shut up.
Like some say him having this podcast with his play this season is just baffling. But I mean, he mentioned like what can help someone like Embiid going through injuries, and he talked about drugs and how that's been helping him this season. So like seeing how he's playing and how he's looking, like he should shut it down too. Like the Sixers should do whatever they can to try and get that draft pick this season, knowing that it's top 6 protected. Otherwise, it goes to the Thunder.
I think that what they were going into this, they were 6th, I think.
They need to try to let the Raptors pass them up.
They're still 6th right now. They're 2 games back in the Tankathon standings from the Raptors right now. They need to get up as high as they can. I don't think they're catching Charlotte, that team. We'll talk about that.
I don't think so.
We'll talk about that a little later. You mentioned Paul George. 19 points in this one. Fine. 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Okay, minus 28 in the minutes that he played, and he played just under 30 minutes. The quote, though, is what stood out to me about Paul George afterwards. He said, quote, "We've shown no sign of a team that will compete, and we just don't have the habits of a champion or a playoff contending team." My question is,
Count it up.
how much of that is Paul George's fault at this point in the season?
A good majority. When one of your team leaders comes out, one of your big free agent acquisitions, someone who you counted on to be part of your big 3 comes out and says like, this team ain't really got that championship aspirations this year. It is what it is. Like, what? What? Is he the right messenger to even be saying this?
I don't know. They say podcasting just makes your basketball skills worse, and that's why I haven't played well in my whole life. I'm just sad that the Mavs sent Quentin Grimes to go waste away there.
Yeah, he's definitely going to waste away. He's going to get some numbers, but
missed that guy.
Empty. Real empty.
Wild. There's no reason why the Sixers shouldn't shut it down because this team is not going anywhere fast. They're literally the 6th worst record in the NBA.
Yeah. And I believe they do play the Raptors 2 more times. So if they do want to try to get into that race for 5th, because I don't think they're catching the 4 teams below the Raptors. They got a position to do it.
Speaking of the team, some of the 4 teams below the Raptors, Portland got a win against the Utah Jazz. The guy that called the game for the Jazz sounded really, really familiar. If you've ever listened to Locked On NBA or Locked On Jazz, shout out to David Locke, stepping up because not only was David Locke called up from the radio to the TV booth, every single other Jazz player from the end of the bench was called up to start. They started Kyle Filipowski, Bryce Sensabaugh, KJ Martin, Isaiah Collier, and Johnny Juzang. And the Blazers started basically all their guys except Ayton. And they had a chance in this game. Keontae George hit 2 wild threes with 10 seconds left and 3 seconds left to make it a 2-point game towards the end. They almost had a chance there. And so shout out to the Jazz for fighting in that one. But my question about these 2 teams, Camille, is
Count it up.
Who will be better in 3 years?
Such a good question. It's such a good question because, like you mentioned, the Jazz, they got Sensabaugh, they got Collier, they got Keontae George, Cody Williams, Taylor Hendricks. They're all under team control through the end of like the 23 season. They got Lauri Markkanen locked in. On the other side with the Blazers, they got Scoot. They got Klingon, they got Kamara, Chris Murray. They're under team control for that same period of time. You got Jeremy Grant and Abdias, who will still be on the books at that time too. But then you got the questions of like, will Anthony Simons resign after his contract's up in 26? Will Shaedon Sharp still be on that roster? And if those are no's, the Blazers look a little bit more shaky. So if I had to just say a guess based off like what they currently have going right now, I would still say the Blazers.
Wow. In 3 years, you think they'll be better?
I think so. I think they're really building something. And if Billups can still be that coach there, that means he's really established the culture for this team. I think they can be really good.
They could. They're obviously better right now, so you've already got a head start on that one. I think I'm going to take the Jazz because I think that they will have, hopefully this year, have better luck in the draft. They're tied for 2nd best odds in the draft. If they just got to hit 1. They got to hit 1 because they haven't had a good draft pick, right? They had the Taylor Hendricks pick was high. Collier was what 10th? Yeah. Hendricks wasn't even high. That was like 9th, right? That was the same as the Lively draft. So they've had, Cody Williams that was 10th. They haven't had a high pick yet in this rebuild era yet. There's a lot of Jazz fans that are like, we don't have anything to take away even from this being bad era yet. And so I think if they get this one, I think that's all it'll take because you've already got some decent pieces. You've got Lauri Markkanen, who I think when right, he hasn't been right this season, I don't think, is the best player of these 2 teams. Simons, you can make an argument.
It's between Simons and him for sure.
Lauri Markkanen, I feel like last year was better. Simons has definitely been better this year.
This year, yeah, for sure.
Kessler is a piece, and you've just got some pieces there, and I'm gonna bet on the Jazz.
It's not a bad bet. It's a really good question. Like, I'm curious to know what the listeners think between those 2 teams. Who's better than 3 years?
Yeah. If you listen to Locked On Blazers, I'm sure I know what you think. If you listen to Locked On Jazz, I think I know what you think too. But both of those are excellent shows. Go listen to both of those. Mm-hmm. The Wizards get their 10th win of the season. They had a bottom 10 record percentage-wise in the 3-point era, and now they rise above that to like 14th, I think, or something like that. They got their 10th win. Let's hear from our guy, Brandon Scott of Locked On Wizards.
Jordan Poole and Blowout Coulibaly combined for 44 points as the Washington Wizards beat the Brooklyn Nets 107-99 for their 10th victory of the season. So how did the Wizards get their 10th win of the season? 2 reasons. Main reasons team-wise. Number 1, defense. Played really good defense against, a similar team in Brooklyn. But, hey, defense has been an issue all year, and we'll definitely take this effort. Number 2, team basketball. Ball movement was fluid tonight. And, again, Jordan Poole and Blowout Coulibaly, the 1-2 punch, they did well tonight, again, combining for 44 points. But Marcus Smart and Chris Middleton, 2 key acquisitions at the trade deadline, bringing toughness and leadership to this team. A lot of talking on the court tonight, but like I said, tensions were high, but you love to see the fight in this young Wizards team. All right, now, Wednesday night, they played the Trailblazers to see if they get their 11th victory of the year. Hail to Wizards, and
let's not get ahead of ourselves, Brandon. Let's not losing sight of the goal here. My question for you, Camille, is,
Count it up.
On that note, is your boy Middleton going to make the Wizards too good for their current goals this season?
Nah, I don't think he'll make him too good this year. Middleton admitted himself like he understands part of why the Bucks traded him is because he needs a little bit more time to get right. And the Bucks are a team that is operating with not much time. They're trying to win now. So I think the situation in Washington is going to work out pretty well for him to be able to kind of just keep hooping, get his legs underneath them, and hopefully make a stride in the offseason.
Yeah, he also only had 7 points tonight, so let's not get too far.
It's not get carried away.
A team that did get carried away, the Kings, just got completely carried away against the Hornets. Got up to a 45-point lead. Zach LaVine, 42 points. I guess I'm just going to ask this about the.
Count it up.
What do you make of Zach LaVine in Sacramento? Because I have not thought too much about it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, Zach LaVine is in Sacramento. That is such a weird spot for him to be right now.
It really is, and the fact that he's reunited with DeMar DeRozan is like that's so weird. And there's no De'Aaron Fox. It feels like a random little Bulls reunion of a sorts. But he's been having a good year prior to his trade to the Kings, so it's like, can he kind of get back to that production on a team with some higher aspirations than what he was playing with in Chicago? And if tonight's any indication, I don't know if he'll shoot this consistently going forward, but at least you saw him have a game where it feels like everything's moving for him.
8 of 9 from 3, 16 of 19 from the field overall, 42 points for him. Really great game for him against a team that is just absolutely awful.
So bad.
I'm looking into hazard pay for Walker Mel and Doug Branson of Locked On Hornets because they have to watch this team over and over again.
Not wrong at all.
And my question again for the Hornets is this.
Count it up.
Damon Baugh hit a 3 to cut the lead to 42. It was 45. He hit a 3 to cut the lead to 42. And he hit an emote afterwards where he like did a celebration, like pointed to ice in his veins, or he did something. I didn't catch it out of the corner of my eye, but I just saw him like emote and run down. Are you for or against the emote cutting the lead to 42?
Absolutely not. That's some NBA 2K random break stuff. If I've ever heard of it, Nick, what? We are not celebrating that. I'm sorry.
He had missed his first 7 shots on that. He finished 1 of 8.
If anything, then after that, your celebration shouldn't even be a cold, like putting your fingers to your arm. It should be like just like a thank you, like just
the thank God, like
something fell.
He was a minus 39 in 26 minutes.
Nuts. Well, it makes sense seeing the margin of loss that they had. The plus minuses weren't going to be great.
It reminded me of the Mavericks and the Suns when Chris Paul with a huge 3 to cut it to 40.
That's the story of the Hornets this year at this point. I thought they were going to be fun. It has just been sad.
You can't hit an emote, cut the lead to 42.
Never. Random wreck behavior.
I was cracking up. There you go. That's NBA Game Night. Go check out all the great shows that cover your team. Check the link in the description to find that show. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA Game Night. Go check out Locked On NBA Daily with Hayes, Matt, and Doug.